Hi, my name is Aston and welcome to the Nexus Mentor Training video series. Today we're talking about the ACT, specifically what's the difference between the SAT and the ACT, did I say SAT and the ACT, and to tease apart the differences and also to transition into the writing section. Okay, so what's the difference between the SAT and the ACT? Currently, the new SAT, as released in 2016, it comprises of two sections, reading and writing, also you can also call it verbal, and math, and also a writing section, which is optional, but most schools require. And ACT, there's 5 sections. The main difference is the science section, and which isn't deep in biology and physics or chemistry or anything like that. Of course, there's that in science, but the main gist of the questions is scientific method. Like, do you understand the scientific method, the process, research, a hypothesis, controlled experiments, things like that. So that's the general difference. And also there's a difference in the writing section as well. In the SAT model, the old SAT, let's talk a little bit about history. In 2005, the SAT was scored on a 1600 scale, max score, 1600. Now, in 2006, it changed to a 2400 scale. Why? Because the UC system said, we won't accept the SAT unless you have a writing section. And the UC system is now has probably over 200,000 applicants, 300,000 applicants. It's a major system, and so it's, in the end, College Board, it's still a kind of a business, I think. So they went ahead and added it. Was it perfect? No. Why? Because it was pretty simplistic, because it had to be standardized. The nature of standardized tests are standardized, which means they must be predictable and reliable, which means they have to be valid, reliable, and predictive, which means that it has to be repeated and duplicated with the same kind of results every single time, because you can't have someone scoring a 20 and then an 80 and a 99 and then a 15 with the same student on the same test. That's not a good test. It's not a reliable test. So the question was, how do we create a writing test that can make everything the same, but in writing? Writing is naturally kind of like an art form, and it's not designed for you to write like in a interpretable, numerical, graded style, if you understand what I mean by art. So they had to come up with a test, and the test they came up with was, so there's a position, and do you agree with it or disagree with it, generally speaking? And you pick a position, you give reasons, and then you give examples to defend it. And within that essay, it has to have an element of good writing, good reasons, good examples. So it's a test of thinking really quickly about reason and examples, and also your writing ability. And there's a rubric. The rubric is a key to understanding what is scored and what is a high score, what is a low score. So the rubric is the interpretation of the writing. So you can understand now how it's standardized. Rubric, writing. Okay, got it? Cool. So that was the old SAT. The problem with it was, is that actual writing ability. When you can do that, your writing can excel to a certain extent. But ACT took up to another level, and what I mean by that is the new SAT, the writing is, they have a kind of passage from like Martin Luther King Jr. or literature, history, something like that. It's pretty difficult to read. If your reading is about 700, then you can interpret it pretty with good speed. If it's like less than 550, you're gonna have really a lot of difficulty understanding this passage that you're gonna read in this writing part. So That's one improvement in one. It integrated reading into writing. You can't separate the two. You can, but integration is higher level thinking to me. So now you have to interpret this thing, and then analyze what this person said and how does this person use rhetorical devices, meaning like how does this person use stylistic elements, diction, syntax, structure, even punctuation. I wouldn't recommend talking about that, but things I would go for would be style, tone, diction, syntax, repetition. Those are common things in writing that really like fire up the audience or your reader, or can really tone it down in a serene way, depending on the types of words that you use. So that's the SAT now. The current ACT is very different in terms of its writing. It gives you a kind of reading passage, and then there are 3 perspectives that are very different from each other. And they could be summarized in 3 different ways, and we'll talk about in the next video. And you look at the perspectives, and then you develop your own perspective, and then you answer the question, answer the prompt. So to preview the ACT method, this is the simple outline of it. We'll go into more detail later, but this is the ACT method. Answer the prompt. 2, analyze, comprehend, think. ACT, I made that up. I don't think it's a really good ACT, like something representing something else. I forgot what that's called. And then 3 is to develop your own perspective. So what is the relationship between your perspective and the perspective of this other person? So there's connection. So one is analyze and interpret. The other one is more read, understand, and connect. So that's the main difference between ACT and SAT writing. Does it make a little more sense? I hope so. And see you in the next video.